Hello, everyone. Welcome back. My name is Jeff Mendelson, and this is the One Big Tip podcast. Mastermind host, speaker, and author. And he is best known for his podcast. And he is also the co-founder of podhacker.com. So we got a lot to talk about today. Matt, welcome to the show.
Yeah, thanks for having me. The audio was a little in and out there, so hopefully it didn't come across that way on the stream. But happy to be here and excited to chat with you.
Thank you so much for joining me. So I wanted to take a few minutes to understand a little bit more about what it is that you do, right? Because there were a lot of commas there. You know, you got the mastermind going on, you got the podcast, you got all this stuff going on. Can you please tell us a little bit about who you are and how you got to where you are today?
Yeah, so I kind of identify as a podcaster most. That's kind of like my main thing. That's what I'm the most passionate about. That's the thing that I get the most excited is for our Hustle and Flowchart podcast. But outside of that, we have me and my co-host and business partner Joe Fear. We've got a couple different memberships. We've got our Evergreen Profits membership, which is a sort of repurposing strategy on the back of our podcast, which we'll talk about in a few minutes. And then we've got our Pod Hacker course now, which is a course all about how to growth hack a podcast. So anybody who has a podcast that's looking to grow it, that's another course that we have available. And then on top of that, we're also affiliate marketers. We do a lot of affiliate stuff and promote a lot of products on our show that we use in our own business and things like that. So that's kind of the whole business in a simple nutshell. And the way we got here was Joe and I, we used to work in a shutter company. I actually was part of the family business. My parents started a shutter company when I was in high school, and around the age of 16, I went and started working at that shutter company. And Joe, at some point along the line, I don't remember all the details and timelines of the dates, but at some point, Joe came in and started working at that shutter company as well. And that's where I really got to know him as a business partner. That's where we became, good buddies and started to explore some business opportunities and things like that. So while we were working at the shutter company in the evenings and in our off time, we would actually build websites and study marketing. And there was a popular forum at the time called the Warrior Forum, which was all about digital marketing. And we used to hang out on that forum and read what other people were doing and experiment with all sorts of marketing tactics and different courses and freelance gigs. And we had an agency for a while and all sorts of stuff. But the biggest piece of what we were doing was always based on content. We were always big on content marketing. So in 2007, we started our first blog. It was a personal finance blog. We started making money off of our personal finance blog and went, ooh, this is actually working kind of well. Let's see if we can duplicate this success on this. So we started a second blog in the health and fitness space. So we had a personal finance blog and a health blog, and the health blog actually did better than the personal finance blog. So by about 2009, we were still working at the shutter company, but we had sort of this passive side income coming in from the blogging. Well, in 2008, there was the housing crisis. And so in 2008, the shutter company started to struggle a little bit more. So by 2009, it was really struggling. And so my family, we actually sold the business to a new owner. And when the new owner came in, he was just an absolute nightmare to work with. He was a kind of a rule with an iron fist, just hard person to work with. And him and I butt heads. And one day I just went, you know what? Screw this. And I quit. And I walked out, left the job, and went, I figured out how to make money blogging. I'm just going to lean all into this, go full time on this. So this was in 2009, quit the job and just went all in on blogging. That was all I was going to focus on. So from 2009 all the way until about 2015, I was just doing blogging. I had a course on blogging. I put together a course called learntoblog.com with a partner at the time, Bradley Will. And in 2015, I actually sold my half of that company to Bradley, my partner, and he took it over full time. And around that time, Joe, my co-host, and I started getting real serious again. We had these other blogs on the side. I did this membership without Joe, but we still had our thing going on the side as well. in 2015, we decided, let's get real serious about working together. We started making content together. We started an agency together at the time doing content marketing for other businesses. We started a print physical newsletter that we mailed to people's houses at the time. And that just kind of evolved and evolved and evolved into what we're doing now, which is a blend of a podcast, affiliate marketing, and a couple of membership sites. So that's the sort of Cliff's Notes version of our storyline so far.
It's interesting. You went old school with a newsletter, right?
Yeah.
Actually, snail mailed it to someone's house. How did you come up with that as a viable as a viable activity for you to do with your for your business? I mean, most people would think like, oh well, I could just distribute this so much easier by sending it out as an email. Why physical?
Yeah, and we're actually still sending the physical newsletter to this day. That's still one of our subscriptions that we sell. But the sort of catalyst for it was I was actually a subscriber to a handful of print newsletters at the time, and I really really liked getting these print newsletters. I liked getting away from a computer and sitting there with my highlighter and kind of reading through these print newsletters and digesting them away from the monitors and things like that. I was a member of the Glazer Kennedy Inner Circle. There was a guy named Ben Settle who had a newsletter all about email marketing. So I got a handful of these newsletters and really enjoyed them. And so Joe and we actually modeled some of those existing letters and went, we like receiving these, let's go create our own. So when we first started the newsletter, we were actually writing everything. We were writing 100% of the content. These new were coming out to between, you know, 36 and 40 pages per month. And Joe and I were writing every single last word. So just imagine like a little mini book coming to your door every single month. And we were charging $100 a month for this newsletter because of how much we were stuffing into it. I mean, it was essentially like all of the experiments, all the things that we were testing in our marketing, little tips from interviews we were doing, things like that was just all compiled into this newsletter. So that was, when did we start that one? I think we started that one in 2016, was when the newsletter officially started. In 2018, I believe, we shifted the format of the newsletter where we interviewed somebody on our show who had a newsletter as well, and he started giving us some tips and advice on ways to sort of better produce the newsletter and better systematize it. So what we started doing was we shifted the newsletter to 100% of the content being repurposed content from the podcast. So we do 2 podcasts a week. We interview 2 marketing experts every single week, and they're giving us, their best Facebook ad strategies, their best YouTube strategies, their best, Instagram strategies, you name it. We've kind of covered the bases with any marketing topic you can imagine. And we were taking all of the big ideas, all the big takeaways, all the big ahas from all these podcast episodes. And now that content is what became the newsletter. And it also allowed us to start outsourcing the process of doing the newsletter, right? Before it was me and Joe writing 100% of it. Now, because it's based on content from the podcasts, we were able to bring a team on board and say, listen to these podcasts, pull out the biggest takeaways, the biggest gold nuggets from this podcast, and write about them in this newsletter for us. So now we were able to fully outsource what the content of the newsletter was going to be. And so that's kind of been the process for the last 4-ish years now.
Amazing. So, let's unpack that a little bit. Basically, what you're doing is that between you and Joe, you guys are interviewing a marketing expert. You lay everything down on tape, and then you could just ship it off to somebody else, like give it to the audio guy to cut up the audio and, make all that work. And then you have the writer go and make the, pull out the golden nuggets, pull out the, make the blog post and all that. Mm-hmm. What then happens like afterwards? Like how much additional value do you add into that before you publish it, of course, right? Mm-hmm. That is still comes back to you besides what you have already interviewed with?
Yeah. So the content of the actual newsletter, so it's all of the interviews that we did from last month. So when we ship our May issue, it's going to be all of the takeaways from all of our April episodes. And then at the end, we always do a section that we call Evergreen Profits Insights. It's called the Evergreen Profits Letter. And the name references back to what our company used to do years and years ago before we kind of rebranded everything as Hustle and Flowchart, but the name stuck for the newsletter. But we wrote a section called the Evergreen Profits Insights, and what that section is another 3 or 4 pages at the end of every newsletter. That's like, it's basically, here's all of the stuff that we've tested this month. Here's some cool resources that we found, some cool tools, some cool YouTube videos we've watched. We kind of round up all of our biggest ahas and insights from the month that was outside of our podcast content. But on top of that, anybody who subscribes to that membership, there's also, you get the print newsletter in the mail, but there's also a digital sort of members portal that people can access as well. And in that members portal, we're asking podcast guests to contribute bonus content and things like that. So we might have like a Facebook ad expert come on and break down a strategy over audio on the podcast. We'll reach out to them after the episode goes live and say, hey, do you want to get in front of all of our paying customers? Can you make a 10-minute tutorial where you're screen sharing the process you explained on the podcast? So now anybody who's listening to the podcast at the end of the show, we could say, make sure you're a member over here if you want to see a visual tutorial of what he just described on this podcast, right? So we're not leaving any stones unturned when we're doing the interview, but there are some things that just having the visuals is going to be better. You're going to better understand what they're talking about. So that's a place where we can leverage the membership and sort of better monetize our podcast by providing a place to load that content into.
That is amazing, right? Because basically what you're doing is that you already have that guest's attention. Like we're all really busy, these days trying to get everything done. But at the same time, you are also leveraging the authority that your guest brought on the show. You are using their authority to increase yours, and they're giving you some extra tidbits as well that you can then sell. So does that then translate back to a profit sharing of some? Does that then turn back into a profit sharing system of some sort for the guest that you just brought on, or did they just do that because they got on the podcast and you're promoting the podcast anyways? Like, how does that work?
Yeah, I mean, there's multiple ways that our guests will benefit off of it. We don't do any sort of like rev share on that side of things. In fact, that membership is, I mean, to be honest, it's barely profitable. We charge $15 a month now for the newsletter. It's no longer $99 a month. We reduced the price down to $15 a month just because it isn't taking as much of our time, and because it isn't 40 pages of unique content anymore. It's now a lot of the repurpose stuff. But basically, every guest that comes on our show, the content that they create with us is going to go out on iTunes, Spotify, all the normal places you'd hear a podcast. It goes out as a YouTube video on YouTube, and then also it goes out in this newsletter. So if anybody missed the audio version or missed the video version, we're now physically putting it right under people's noses and saying, hey, if you haven't consumed this content, consume it here. So they're still getting that additional branding. We're still giving them credit. We're still saying all of this content was, this was all of the ideas that Jeff shared with us on the podcast, right? So we're giving them credit, and we're still linking off to their websites from the newsletter and telling them where they can go learn more. So there's that branding element. But then the other piece is we do a lot of affiliate marketing as well. In fact, affiliate marketing right now is our number one source of revenue. Most of the money we make comes from affiliate products. So a lot of the guests that come on the podcast, if they have an affiliate product, we're going to be linking to that and promoting that as well. And so that's another benefit, is we're going to drive some traffic and some sales to their offers if they have one.
So what's interesting about that is that, say in the course of this conversation, I tell you that I think that Active Campaign is the best marketing automation tool.
Mm-hmm.
You would just slap your affiliate link on top of that, and then whoever clicks on it also, so basically you have this income coming in from all these different directions, from all these different
Right.
affiliate marketing programs, and you're using it to guide people into what your opinion is the best tool for this or the best tool for that, right?
Right. And we even take it a step beyond that with the affiliate marketing. So we do retargeting on Facebook. So let's say, a good example is we had this guy, Josh Bartlett, on our show. He's the founder of a tool called ThriveCart. It's a online e-commerce shopping cart tool. He came on the show. It's the tool that we use for all of our products, so we highly recommend it. And so when he came on our show, anybody who listened to that episode on the website, right, that we were able to, drop our Facebook retargeting pixel. Anybody who listened to that episode, we would then go and retarget with an ad on Facebook for his tool, Thrivecart. So people would come over, listen to the episode with Josh Bartlett, hear him explain Thrivecart and all the benefits and all of what it does, all the features, all the cool stuff. And then when they get on Facebook next time, they start seeing an ad for Thrivecart. That's because we're actually running an ad to anybody who listened to that episode for Thrivecart itself as well. So we're kind of crossing over. Anybody who listens to this content is probably going to be interested in this product. So let's put this product in front of them in a timely manner. So we have that element as well that the people that come on our show really like, because we're essentially paying to send more traffic to them.
Exactly. Yeah. So, and if you can make, so when you make the commission on that, I mean, basically you're helping out both. So that's actually brilliant.
Mm-hmm.
What other ways do you repurpose the content for the podcast after the interview? So, you talked a little bit about the video, you talked about the affiliate links. What are some other ways that you can take the content that you have and really put it out there so it's got all these different legs? Like everyone likes to quote, who is it, Gary V. It's like,
Yeah.
oh yeah, you should be able to create like 20 or 60, I forgot the exact quote, right?
Yeah.
You should be able to create this amazing amount of content just off of one blog post, for example.
Mm-hmm.
How do you guys do it? Like, what are some of the other things that you guys do in order to make all that go around?
Yeah, and I agree with Gary. I just think that when you're looking at the 60 places you could put it, there's an 80-20 in effect there, where of the 60 places you're putting it, you're probably only getting results off 10 of them or so. Yeah, so with us, so I'll just kind of walk through our flow that way, because the way my brain works is I need to kind of like map it out. So we record our podcast episodes, we throw them into a Dropbox folder. And when they go into a Dropbox folder, there's two other team members that have access to that Dropbox. We've got our editor who listens to it and cleans it all up and adds our intro and outro and does all that kind of stuff. And then we have our writer who writes the action guides that go out into our monthly newsletter. And then she writes the show notes page. And the show notes page is kind of a teaser to get people to listen to the podcast. So it'll have, bullets and open loops and try to get people to click play, basically. So that's kind of the first step of things that happen. Now, Jacob, the guy who does our audio editing, he also does our video editing. So he then takes the videos and makes the full long interview. They're usually about an hour-ish. He puts those on YouTube, and then he also will pull out 2 or 3 clips from the YouTube, from the video. So there'll be 5 to 10 minute clips of just kind of like one sort of gold nugget from the episode, and those will also go on YouTube. So the long form videos will go on YouTube the same day the audio goes live, and then the clips will go live in the sort of Monday, Wednesday, Friday, the in-between days that we don't have new episodes going live. He then takes those clips, those shorter clips, and he puts them on LinkedIn, he puts them on Instagram TV, he puts them on into our Facebook group, and then he puts them on our Facebook fan page, and he puts them on Twitter. So he distributes the shorter versions of all those clips to all of those social media channels. And then the notes, the actual action guides, they go to the print newsletter. But then we also put a PDF in the members area as well, so people can actually get digital access if that's the way they prefer. So those go in there as well. And then we also, we're actually not doing this anymore because 80-20 kind of thing, it wasn't getting us a lot of results, but we thought it was a cool idea, is we actually made a separate clips show off of Hustle and Flowchart. So we had a separate RSS feed going into iTunes called Hustle and Flow Shorts, and it was 5 to 10 minute audio clips, the same clips you would use on YouTube, the shorter clips. He just repurposed those into another audio podcast on iTunes so that people who only wanted just a real short tidbit from the episode could listen to just those clips. And then, of course, we'd promote the full episode. Hey, did you like this little clip? The full episode's available here. And we would, give them some URL where they can go listen to the full thing. We also make quote cards. So this is another thing that Jacob does when he gets the audio file. As he's doing the editing, he's listening for like really cool quotes that he could pull out. He'll make little memes. He makes them in Snappa, which is similar to Canva, if you're familiar with Canva. He'll make these little meme cards that we put on Instagram. When our episode goes live, we email the guest and we say, here's a tweet that you can use, already pre-written, that's got your link in it. Here's an Instagram image you can use. Here's a 3-minute clip from your podcast episode that you can share on whatever social media you want, and we just send them a zip file with all of these assets after it's over. So hopefully that our guest will, share it in whatever way feels best for them to share it. So we make those quote cards, and then he also makes little audiograms, so little 15-30 second clips that he throws into our Instagram stories as well. And I think that's the whole process. I think that's everything. There might be some other little things that he's doing that aren't moving the needle as much, but those are all of the core things that we're doing to repurpose the podcast.
You know what's interesting about that? All right, so first of all, that is just a boatload of content, right? That that you're producing, and you're covering so many bases, right? Not only all of the relevant social channels that you kind of should be targeting, right? But you're also appreciating and leveraging the time that the guest took to be on your show in order to give them back something. So, you're taking that information, you're processing it, and you're making it easier for them not only to promote themselves, but also to promote you as well.
Yeah,
Right.
absolutely.
And what's really cool about that is that we're talking about this in the pre-call, where podcasting is not just well, first of all, it's not vanity, right? It's like, I don't do this for vanity metrics, right? I do this now for networking, right? It's like, how would you and I have met otherwise, if it wasn't for this? Maybe at a traffic and conversions convention, but that ain't happening right now, right?
Right.
So, we have to find other ways. And the technology has really caught up to us. So right now we're streaming, right? It's just, just go into a browser window and go send it out. And everyone is listening to or watching, these informational programs that we're producing. Right. And then it makes it, it really makes it viable. And that, some people prefer YouTube. Great. Go to the channel. There it is. Some people prefer to listen to it on, just on their earbuds. Great. Here's the audio, and I think what happens is that, I think the key word here is process, right? Because you do have a set process that someone, actually anyone, can follow to go and create this stuff off of each and every episode. Basically, what that leaves you to do is to show up and be the talent.
That was the goal with the whole thing. I mean, when we, just to speak into what you were saying, when we first started the podcast, the Hustle and Flowchart podcast, we started in 2017, but we'd been podcasting since 2010, and they were kind of on and off and different shows that faded and things like that. But when we first started this podcast, we had quite a bit of experience under our belts with podcasting, and we went into it going, I don't care if we ever make a penny off of this podcast. I don't care. I don't care if we only ever get to 100 downloads per episode. It doesn't matter to us. All we're doing this for is for the networking element. We're going to leverage this podcast to try to connect with as many people as possible and to also get help in our business a little. That's another thing that I don't think a lot of podcasters talk about is I can bring on a guest to our show. And if I'm struggling to figure out YouTube ads, I can bring on a YouTube ads expert and say, this is what I'm struggling with. What would you do? And they'll basically consult me for free because they know I'm going to share it with our subscribers. So, the networking and the sort of educational element of it was our original intention. Luckily, we figured out some cool ways to monetize and cool ways to grow the show, but that was never the intention in the beginning. It was purely that networking element. That's still to this day probably the most valuable piece of the podcast as well.
What's interesting is that, I looked at your guest list, right? The guests that you bring on the show are absolutely amazing. A-listers, from the digital marketing, the internet marketing world. And you're right. These are people that if I was to call them up would be like, yeah, it's $5,000 an hour. Right. But you just got them to be on your show for an hour, and you guys just, talk back and forth, and then boom, you got the same stuff for free.
Exactly. It's exactly amazing. Where it's at right there.
I love it. Matt, can you please let everyone know how they can reach you, how they can learn more about the podcast, and how they can get in contact with you if they'd like to learn more?
Yeah, so the best place to probably go is flowchartgroup.com. That actually redirects to our Facebook group. But flowchartgroup.com, we announce every time a new episode goes live. Whenever we put new blog posts up, it goes up there. Joe and I, we live stream quite a bit to that group whenever we kind of discover new tricks or tactics or anything like that. So that's probably the best place that if you went to flowchartgroup.com, you'll kind of learn about everything else we're doing. The second place is our kind of newer thing, which is our podhacker.com, which is, I kind of hinted at it earlier. If you have a podcast already, it's a place where we teach you various growth strategies and various monetization strategies for your podcast.
Amazing, amazing stuff. Matt, thank you so much for joining me today. This has been a lot of fun. I love nerding out on this stuff, and it's just been very informative. We're going to pull out so much value out of this conversation. Thank you for joining me today.
Yeah, it's been a blast. Love doing it.